The lecture hall was massive. It could hold over 1,000 cadets from dozens of different worlds. The seats rose up like stairs, and at the bottom stood a stage with floating screens and holographic displays. The room smelled strange, like metal and chemicals mixed together. Una Park sat in the front row, her hands folded neatly on her desk. She looked small compared to the aliens around her. Some had 4 arms. Others had scales or feathers. A few didn't even have solid bodies. But Una kept her face calm and her eyes forward. Instructor Velos walked onto the stage. He was tall, almost 3 meters, with 4 muscular arms and gray skin that looked like stone. His voice was deep and carried easily through the hall without any need for speakers. "Today we begin your survival training theory," he announced. "Before you can fight, before you can lead, you must learn to survive. And to understand survival, you must understand danger." He pressed a button, and a hologram appeared above the stage. It showed a beautiful blue and green planet, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. White clouds swirled across its surface. Oceans glittered under the light of a yellow star. "This," Velos said, "is planet Earth. Classification, Class 12. Death World, the most dangerous habitable planet ever recorded in galactic surveys." The cadets gasped. Whispers spread through the hall like wind through grass. Una did not move. She just watched the image of her home spinning above the stage. Velos continued, his voice growing more serious. "Earth sits in what primitive species call the Goldilocks zone of its star system. But do not be fooled by its appearance. This world is a nightmare." He changed the display. Now it showed data and images. Storms with winds that could tear apart buildings. Earthquakes that split the ground open. Volcanoes that buried entire regions in fire and ash. Oceans filled with creatures that had hundreds of teeth. Forests where predators hunted in silence. "The atmosphere contains high levels of oxygen," Velos explained. "This gas is corrosive and highly flammable. One spark in the wrong place and entire forests explode into flames that burn for weeks." More images appeared. Lightning strikes. Wildfires. Floods that washed away everything in their path. The planet experiences extreme temperature changes. In some regions, temperatures drop so low that water becomes solid. In others, the heat is enough to kill an unprotected being in minutes. And the native wildlife? He paused and showed images of sharks, tigers, crocodiles, and venomous snakes. Every environment on this planet contains apex predators designed for killing. A cadet behind Una made a sound of disgust. How could anything intelligent evolve there? He whispered to his friend. "The dominant species would have to be monsters," his friend replied. "Violent, savage beasts." Una kept her expression blank. She wrote something in her notebook, but no one could read it. The characters were not in any galactic language. Cadet Ren, tall reptilian with green scales and sharp teeth, laughed loudly from the middle rows. "Instructor, surely this planet is just a legend? No civilized being could come from such a place." Velos nodded slowly. "You are partially correct, Cadet Ren. Earth is real, but it exists in a remote arm of the galaxy. The beings there, called humans, have only recently developed space travel. They are considered primitive and are currently under observation. No human has ever attended this academy. No human has ever served in the galactic military. Because they are beasts," Ren said with a cruel smile. "Animals cannot be soldiers." Some cadets laughed. Others nodded in agreement. Una's pen stopped moving. She looked up at the hologram of Earth, her face still showing nothing. Velos raised one of his forehands for silence. "Earth serves as our ultimate training scenario. When we design survival simulations, we use Earth's conditions as the maximum danger level. If you can survive a theoretical Earth environment, you can survive anything. But let me be clear." He paused and looked across the room. "No cadet from any civilized world could survive on Earth for more than 3 standard days. The gravity alone would crush your bones over time. The bacteria would destroy your immune system. The predators would hunt you without mercy. Earth is death itself given form." The room was silent. Every cadet understood the message. Earth was the worst place in the universe. Nothing good could come from there. Why? UNA raised her hand. Velos looked surprised. Front row cadets rarely spoke during orientation. Yes, Cadet. You have a question? I was wondering, Una said, her voice soft but clear. What if someone from Earth wanted to attend this academy? Would they be allowed? The room went quiet again, but this time it was a confused silence. Cadets turned to look at the small female in the front row. She didn't look like much. Short black hair, brown eyes, skin that was neither scaled nor feathered, just smooth and pale. Velos chuckled, a deep rumbling sound. That is an amusing thought experiment, Cadet. But such a being would not exist in civilized form. Humans are primitive. They fight among themselves. They have barely left their own solar system. Even if one somehow reached us, they would be too violent, too unstable to function in our society. I see, Una said politely. Thank you for explaining. She lowered her hand and returned to her notebook. Around her, cadets lost interest and turned back to the lecture. Just a strange question from a strange cadet. Nothing important. But if anyone had looked at Una's notebook, they would have seen words written in Korean, a language that did not exist in any galactic database. The words said, Day 1, they have no idea. Velos finished his lecture with more warnings about dangerous planets and deadly environments. He assigned reading materials and dismissed the class. Cadets filed out, talking loudly about the horrors of Earth and how glad they were to come from safe, civilized worlds. Una packed her things slowly. She took one last look at the hologram of Earth before it flickered and disappeared. For just a moment, something crossed her face. It might have been homesickness. It might have been amusement. Or it might have been something else entirely. She walked out of the lecture hall and into the wide corridors of the Galactic Military Academy. Around her, aliens of every shape and size moved toward their next classes. None of them looked at her twice. She was just another cadet. Just another student trying to survive. They had no idea that the deadliest thing on their campus was a quiet girl from Busan who missed the smell of the ocean and the taste of her mother's cooking, and Una planned to keep it that way. For now. 2 weeks passed at the academy. Una attended classes, completed assignments, and stayed quiet. She learned the names of her fellow cadets, but did not make friends. She ate alone in the cafeteria, choosing foods that looked closest to what she knew from home. Most of it was bland and tasteless, but she never complained. The other cadets ignored her. She was small, plain, and unremarkable. Cadet Ren sometimes made jokes about the quiet one, but never directly to her face. Una let the comments pass. She had survived worse than words. On the 15th day, Instructor Velos announced the first practical survival test. Cadets would be dropped into Biome Chamber 7, a simulated classics jungle environment. They would have minimal supplies and 48 hours to reach the extraction point. Teams would be assigned randomly. Una's team had 5 members. There was Ren, who immediately declared himself leader. There was a tall insectoid named Crix, who rarely spoke. There were 2 amphibian cadets named Bello and Mora, who seemed nervous about everything. And there was Una. Ren looked at his team with obvious disappointment. We have weaklings and a silent nobody, he muttered. Fine. Stay behind me and do exactly what I say. I will get us through this. The team was transported to the drop zone. The jungle was thick and hot. Strange plants with purple leaves grew everywhere. The air was heavy with moisture, and the sounds of unknown creatures filled the shadows. Crix immediately began scanning the environment with a device on his arm. Bello and Mara huddled together, their skin already drying in the heat. Move out, Ren commanded. He picked a direction and started walking. The others followed. Una walked at the back of the group. She watched everything. She noticed how the plants bent toward water sources. She saw the small trails left by animals moving through the undergrowth. She smelled the air and detected the faint scent of something rotting nearby, which meant predators might be close. After 3 hours, the team was lost. Ren's navigation device had stopped working in the dense foliage. The amphibians were getting weaker, their bodies needing water that they couldn't find. Crix's scanner showed dozens of life forms around them, some of them large. "We should stop and rest," Bello said, his voice tired. "We cannot stop," Ren snapped. "The extraction point is somewhere ahead. We keep moving. If we keep moving without water, they will die," Una said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. It was the first time she had spoken since the test began. Ren's eyes narrowed. "Do you have a better idea, Silent One?" Una pointed to the left. "There is water that way. Maybe 200 meters. The plants are greener there, and I can hear something moving through wet ground. You can hear water from here?" Mara asked in disbelief. Una shrugged. "I can hear something. Water or animals that need water. Either way, it is worth checking." Ren wanted to argue, but he had no better plan. He gestured for Una to lead. She moved through the jungle with a confidence that surprised the others. She stepped over roots without looking down. She pushed aside branches at exactly the right moment. It was like she had done this 1,000 times before. Within 10 minutes, they found a small stream. The water was clear and cool. Bello and Mara immediately submerged themselves, sighing with relief. Crix scanned the water and confirmed it was safe to drink. "Lucky guess," Ren said, but his voice had lost some of its sharpness. Una didn't respond. She was already looking around, studying the area. "We should make camp here," she said. "The sun will set soon. Traveling at night in an unfamiliar jungle is dangerous." "The rules say we have 48 hours, Ren protested. "We cannot waste time sleeping." "The rules also say we need to survive," Una replied calmly. "Dead cadets cannot reach extraction points." Ren opened his mouth to argue, but Crix spoke first. "She is correct. My scanner shows increased predator activity after dark. We should establish a defensive position." "Outnumbered," Ren agreed, but he refused to help with the work. He sat on a rock and watched as Una began building a shelter. She worked fast and efficiently. She used large leaves to create a waterproof roof. She wove branches together to make walls that would hide their heat signatures. She even dug a small trench around the camp to discourage crawling creatures from entering. "Where did you learn to do this?" Mora asked, watching with wide eyes. "I used to go camping with my family," Una said simply. "In the mountains near my home, we would stay in the forest for days sometimes." "Your planet has forests where people camp for fun." Bello sounded horrified. Una smiled slightly but said nothing. As darkness fell, Una started a fire. She didn't use any tools from their supplies. She just found 2 pieces of dry wood and rubbed them together with practiced hands. Within minutes, she had sparks. Within an hour, she had a steady flame that provided warmth and kept the shadows away. The night was long and full of sounds. Creatures screamed in the darkness. Heavy footsteps circled their camp. Glowing eyes watched from the trees. The other cadets huddled near the fire, terrified. Una sat calmly, feeding small sticks into the flames. She seemed almost relaxed. Near midnight, something emerged from the jungle. It was massive, at least 4 meters long, with 6 legs and a mouth full of teeth. Its eyes reflected the firelight as it stalked toward the camp. Bello screamed. Mara tried to run but tripped. Crix reached for a weapon he didn't have. Ren froze completely, his earlier confidence gone. Una stood up slowly. She did not run. She did not scream. She made herself as tall as possible, raised her arms above her head, and produced a sound from deep in her chest. It was not quite a growl and not quite a roar. It was something primal, something ancient, something that spoke directly to the predator's instincts. The creature stopped. Its ears flattened. Its body language changed from hunting to uncertain. It took a step back, then another. Then it turned and disappeared into the jungle. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Ren found his voice. "How did you know that would work?" he demanded. Una sat back down by the fire. "Everything that hunts also fears being hunted," she said. "That is true everywhere. You just have to make the predator believe you are more dangerous than you look." "But you are not dangerous," Ren said. "You are the smallest one here." Una poked at the fire with a stick. Size is not everything. The rest of the night passed without incident. When morning came, Yuna led the team toward the extraction point. She navigated by the position of the artificial sun, by the growth patterns of the plants, and by instincts that the others could not understand. They reached the extraction point 6 hours early. They were the first team to finish. Their score was the highest in the entire class. Instructor Velos reviewed the recordings with obvious surprise. He made notes about Cadet Park's unusual performance, but wrote it off as natural talent and beginner's luck. That night in her small room, Yuna received a message on her personal device. It was encrypted, untraceable, and written in Korean. I know what you are. Meet me at Dock 7 tonight. Come alone. Yuna stared at the message for a long time. Then she deleted it, put on her jacket, and walked into the darkness of the academy. Someone else knew her secret, and she needed to find out who. Dock 7 was on the far side of the academy campus. It was a maintenance area where old ships were repaired and spare parts were stored. At night it was empty and dark, lit only by the distant glow of the station's artificial stars. Yuna walked through the shadows without fear. She had grown up in a world where the night held real dangers, not just darkness and silence. This empty dock was nothing compared to the forests of Korea or the streets of Busan. After midnight, she found the meeting spot behind a row of deactivated cargo shuttles. Someone was already there, sitting on a metal crate. The figure was small, with black hair and features that looked remarkably similar to Yuna's own. You came, the figure said in Korean. The voice was female, young and slightly nervous. You invited me, Yuna replied in the same language. It felt strange to speak her native tongue after weeks of using only Galactic Standard. Who are you? The girl jumped down from the crate and stepped into the light. She was about Yuna's age, maybe a year or two older. She had sharp eyes and a cautious smile. My name is Hannah, she said. I'm from Seoul. I've been here for 2 years. Yuna's eyes widened. 2 years? How is that possible? The integration program only started recently. Hannah laughed softly. The official program, yes. But there were test subjects before that. I was one of the first. They wanted to see if humans could survive in galactic society before they announced anything publicly. And you've been hiding your identity this whole time? Just like you, Hannah said. I saw you during the survival test. The way you moved, the way you built that shelter, the way you faced that predator. No alien would do those things. Only someone from Earth would be that comfortable with danger. Yuna let out a slow breath. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she felt something loosen in her chest. She was not alone. It's been hard, Yuna admitted, pretending to be just another cadet. Listening to them talk about Earth like it's a horror story. I know, Hannah said. In my first month, had to sit through 3 lectures about how humans were probably violent savages who would destroy themselves before ever reaching the stars. I wanted to scream at them, but you didn't. No, because we have to be careful. Hannah's expression grew serious. The academy is starting to notice things. Cadets who perform too well, who recover from injuries too fast, who don't react to conditions that should be stressful. They have algorithms that flag unusual patterns. Yuna thought about her survival test score. I might have drawn attention to myself. You definitely did. But don't worry. I've learned how to manage it. Sometimes you have to fail on purpose. Sometimes you have to pretend to be tired or scared when you're not. Hannah paused. It's exhausting, honestly. But it keeps us safe. They talked for hours. Hannah told Yuna about her life in Seoul, about her family, about the strange journey that had brought her to the stars. Yuna shared her own story. She talked about Busan, about the ocean, about her brother Taeho, who was now a pilot in Earth's new Space Defense Force. For the first time in weeks, Ina laughed. Really laughed. Hannah understood things that no alien could. The way rain smelled before a storm. The taste of real food made by human hands. The feeling of standing on solid ground under a blue sky. We should be careful about meeting too often, Hannah warned as the night grew late. But I wanted you to know you're not alone. And I wanted to warn you about Cadet Ren. Yuna's smile faded. What about him? He's been asking questions. After the survival test, He filed an inquiry about your homeworld registration. Your file says Sol System, classified. That's unusual. Most cadets have specific planet names listed. Didn't know that. Most humans don't think about those details. But Ren is suspicious. He doesn't like that someone showed him up, especially someone he considers inferior. Yuna nodded slowly. Ren's pride had been wounded. He would not let it go easily. Over the next few days, Yuna noticed the attention increasing. Instructor Velos watched her during combat training. He observed how she moved, how she reacted, how she recovered from hits that would have left other cadets on the ground for minutes. He made notes on his tablet but said nothing. Then came the medical examination. All cadets were required to undergo routine health scans every month. Yuna had managed to avoid the first one by claiming illness. But she couldn't avoid it forever. The academy physician was an elderly creature with 8 eyes and 6 thin arms. He moved around Yuna with scientific curiosity, scanning her body with various devices. "Interesting," he murmured. "Very interesting? Is something wrong?" Yuna asked, keeping her voice calm. "Not wrong, exactly. Just unusual." He showed her the scan results. "Your bone density is significantly higher than average for your listed species category. Your muscle fibers are more tightly packed. You have what appears to be redundant organ systems. And your cardiovascular system." He paused, studying the data. "It seems designed for extreme endurance." "I exercise a lot," Yuna said weakly. The physician looked at her with all 8 eyes. "Cadet Park, I have scanned thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds. I have never seen biology quite like yours. Where exactly are you from?" Yuna met his gaze without flinching. "My homeworld is classified, I see?" The physician was quiet for a moment. Then he turned back to his console. "I will need to make some notes for your file. Standard procedure, you understand." Yuna left the medical bay with a knot in her stomach. Her file would now have flags that anyone could see. Questions would be asked. Investigations would begin. When she returned to her quarters, she found a message waiting on her screen. It was an official academy notice. "Cadet Park Yuna, you are required to report to Instructor Velas's office at 0800 tomorrow. This is a mandatory appointment." Yuna sat on her bed and stared at the message. She thought about running. She thought about hiding. But those options went against everything she believed. She was human. Humans did not run from problems. They faced them. The next morning, she walked to Velas's office with her head held high. The corridors were empty at this early hour. Her footsteps echoed against the metal floors. When she reached the office, the door slid open automatically. Instructor Velos was sitting behind his desk, his forearms folded. On the desk in front of him was a holographic display showing a rotating image of Earth. "Cadet Park," he said slowly. His voice was calm, but heavy with meaning. "Please, sit down. I believe we need to have a conversation about where you are really from." Yuna took a seat across from him. She looked at the image of her home planet spinning silently above the desk. Blue oceans. Green continents. White clouds. The most beautiful sight in the universe, at least to her. "What would you like to know?" she asked. Velos leaned forward, his stone-gray face unreadable. "I want to know how a being from a Class 12 death world ended up in the front row of my classroom. And I want to know why you didn't tell anyone what you really are." Yuna took a deep breath. The time for secrets was over, 'cause, she said quietly, no one ever asked. Instructor Velos stared at Yuna for a long time. His forearms remained folded, but his eyes moved constantly, studying her like she was a specimen in a laboratory. "You are human," he said finally. It was not a question, as Yuna replied simply. "I was born in Busan, a city on the southern coast of Korea. Korea is a country on Earth. I grew up there, went to school there, and lived a normal life until I was chosen for the integration program." "The integration program." "Yes." Velos repeated the words like they were foreign to him. "I was not informed that such a program existed. It is still classified. Earth has only recently made contact with the wider galaxy. The governments were nervous about how other species would react to us. So they started small. A few humans sent to different academies and institutions to prove we could function in galactic society." Velos leaned back in his chair. And they sent you here. To a military academy, I volunteered, Una said. I wanted to serve, to explore, to show that humans are more than the monsters your textbooks describe. There was silence in the office. The hologram of Earth continued to spin slowly, casting blue light across the walls. I have read those textbooks, Velos said carefully. I have taught from them for 30 years. They describe Earth as a world of unimaginable danger. They describe humans as creatures shaped by violence, forged in an environment that would kill any civilized being. That is not entirely wrong, Una admitted. Earth is dangerous. Our history is filled with war and struggle, but we are also capable of great kindness, great art, great love. We did not survive our world by being monsters. We survived by working together, by adapting, by refusing to give up no matter how hard things became. Velos was quiet again. Then he asked a question that surprised Una, the survival test. When you faced that predator, you did not run. You did not freeze. You stood your ground and made it retreat. How Una thought about her answer. On Earth, we share our world with many dangerous animals. Lions, tigers, bears, wolves. When I was young, my family would hike in the mountains near Busan. My father taught me what to do if we encountered a wild boar or a large dog. Stand tall. Make noise. Never show fear. Most predators do not want to fight. They want easy prey. You learn to face predators as a child? All humans do in one way or another. Our world required it. Velos stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the academy grounds stretched toward the artificial horizon of the space station. Thousands of cadets went about their daily routines. Unaware of the conversation happening in this small office, I spent 30 years teaching cadets that Earth was the worst place in the universe, Velos said quietly. I told them that nothing intelligent could come from such a world. That any being born there would be a mindless savage. He turned to face Una. I was wrong. Did not know, Una said. How could you? Humans have been isolated for so long. Ignorance is not an excuse. Velos returned to his desk and sat down heavily. I must report this to the academy director. You understand that your situation will become public. I understand. There will be fear. There will be anger. Some cadets will refuse to train alongside you. Some instructors will demand your removal. Una nodded. She had expected this from the beginning. But Velos continued, and something changed in his voice. I will tell them what I have seen. A cadet who excelled in every test. A soldier who faced danger without hesitation. A young woman who showed more courage and composure than beings twice her age with twice her training. Una felt a warmth spread through her chest. Thank you, instructor. Do not thank me yet. The academy director is not as open-minded as I am. The news spread through the academy like wildfire. Within hours, everyone knew. A human was among them. A being from the legendary death world called Earth was walking their corridors. Eating in their cafeteria, training in their facilities, reactions varied wildly. Some cadets were terrified. They avoided Una in the hallways, pressing themselves against walls as she passed. Others were fascinated. They approached her with endless questions about Earth, about humans, about how she had survived her childhood. Cadet Ren was furious. He confronted Una in the training yard, surrounded by a crowd of watching cadets. You lied to us, he hissed. You hid what you were? You made fools of us all. Una remained calm. I never lied. I simply did not volunteer information that no one asked for. You are a monster from a monster world. You do not belong here. On Earth, Una said quietly, we have a saying. Fall 7 times. Stand up 8. I have been knocked down many times in my life, Cadet Ren. By storms, by hardship, by people who thought I was not good enough. I am still standing. That is not because I am a monster. It is because I never learned how to give up. Ren had no response. He turned and stormed away. His scales flushed with embarrassment. The academy director called an emergency assembly the next day. All cadets and instructors gathered in the main hall. Yuna was called to the stage, along with another figure who surprised everyone. Hannah stepped out of the crowd and stood beside Yuna. She had decided that if one human was going to be exposed, she would not let her face it alone. The director, an ancient being with silver fur and wise eyes, addressed the assembly. We have discovered that 2 of our cadets are humans from Earth. This revelation has caused concern among students and staff alike. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world by all our scientific understanding. Beings from such an environment should not be capable of civilized behavior. The hall was silent. Every eye was on Yuna and Hannah. However, the director continued, these 2 cadets have demonstrated exceptional performance. They have followed every rule. They have harmed no one. They have, in fact, shown qualities that this academy values: resilience, adaptability, and courage under pressure. Still, he said, safety concerns have been raised. Some have requested that these cadets be removed from the program. We will now hold a vote among senior staff to decide their fate. Before the vote could begin, alarms blared throughout the hall. Red lights flashed. A voice came over the communication system. Emergency alert. Distress signal received from Colony Mir 7. Catastrophic environmental collapse in progress. Thousands of civilians trapped. Conditions classified as Class 10. All available rescue teams are requested to respond. The director called for order, but chaos was already spreading. A Class 10 world, almost as dangerous as Earth. Rescue teams would have to face toxic air, volcanic activity, and collapsing structures. The survival rate for such missions was very low. We cannot send cadets into those conditions, one instructor shouted. They would not survive. Our trained rescue units are days away, another replied. By the time they arrive, the civilians will be dead. In the middle of the panic, Yuna stepped forward. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. I volunteer. The hall went silent again. Everyone turned to look at the small human standing alone on the stage. I have lived on a Class 12 death world my entire life, Yuna said. A Class 10 environment is not much worse than a bad summer in Korea. I can handle it. Let me help. Anna stepped forward to stand beside her. So do I. 2 humans are better than 1. The director stared at them. The crowd stared at them. Even Instructor Velos, standing at the edge of the stage, seemed unsure what to say. Finally, the director spoke. You would risk your lives for colonists you have never met. For beings who might fear and hate you simply because of what you are. Yuna looked at Hannah, then back at the director. On Earth, we have another saying. The measure of a person is not how they treat those who can help them, but how they treat those who cannot. Those colonists need help. We can provide it. That is all that matters. The director was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Prepare for deployment. And may whatever gods watch over your strange world, watch over you now. Yuna turned to face the crowd of cadets and instructors. She saw fear in some eyes, respect in others, and perhaps even hope in a few. We will bring them home, she promised. That is what humans do. The transport ship shook violently as it descended through the atmosphere of Mir 7. Through the small windows, Yuna could see nothing but orange and red. The sky was on fire. Volcanic ash filled the air so thickly that the sensors could barely function. Their team was small. Yuna and Hannah led the group, followed by 5 volunteer cadets who had found enough courage to join the mission. None of them had ever experienced conditions like this. None of them were prepared for what waited below. The ship landed hard on unstable ground. The ramp lowered, and immediately the heat hit them like a wall. The air was thick with sulfur and smoke. In the distance, volcanoes erupted in brilliant displays of destruction. The ground trembled constantly. One of the cadets, a young insectoid named Pell, stumbled and fell. I cannot breathe, he gasped. The air is poison. Yuna pulled him to his feet. Keep your mask sealed and take shallow breaths. Your body will adapt in a few minutes. Trust me, the group moved forward. Their destination was a civilian shelter 3 kilometers away, where scanners showed over 400 life signs. The path between was a nightmare. Rivers of molten rock cut across the landscape. Collapsed buildings blocked the roads. And somewhere in the darkness, creatures driven mad by the disaster hunted anything that moved. Hannah took point, using her scanner to find the safest route. "There is a path through those ruins," she called out. "It will add time, but we avoid the lava flows." "Do it," Yuna agreed. They entered the ruins of what had once been a town. Buildings leaned at dangerous angles. Fires burned in windows. The bodies of those who had not escaped lay in the streets, covered by ash. The cadets grew quieter as they walked. This was not a simulation. This was real death, real destruction. Some of them had never seen anything like it. A massive shape emerged from the smoke ahead. It was some kind of native predator, 3 meters tall, with armored skin and claws like knives. Its eyes were wild with fear and rage. It had lost its home, its territory, everything it knew. Now it saw the rescue team as either a threat or prey. "Nobody move," Yuna whispered. She stepped forward slowly, placing herself between the creature and her team. "Yuna, what are you doing?" One of the cadets hissed. She didn't answer. She watched the predator carefully, reading its body language. It was scared, confused, not hunting. Just reacting to a world that had suddenly become chaos. Yuna crouched low and made herself small. She lowered her gaze, avoiding direct eye contact. She made a soft sound, almost like a hum, low and steady. The creature paused. Its claws relaxed slightly. It sniffed the air, trying to understand this strange being that was not running. It's not attacking, just waiting. After a long moment, the predator turned and disappeared into the smoke. It was looking for safety, not a fight. Hannah let out a breath she had been holding. "How do you know these things will work?" "I don't," Yuna admitted. "But on Earth, I learned that most creatures just want to survive. Fear makes them dangerous. If you can show them you are not a threat, sometimes they choose peace. And if they don't," Yuna smiled grimly, "then you fight. But you always try peace first." They pressed on. The journey that should have taken an hour took 3. The ground collapsed beneath them twice. They had to carry one cadet whose legs had been burned by acid spray. Hannah's scanner broke, forcing them to navigate by sight and instinct. But Yuna never stopped. She kept moving forward, kept finding paths through the destruction, kept encouraging the others when they wanted to give up. Finally, they reached the shelter. It was a reinforced building designed to withstand minor disasters. But this disaster was not minor. The walls were cracking. The air filtration system was failing. Inside, over 400 civilians huddled in fear. When Yuna opened the doors, a wave of despair washed over her. The civilians were of many species, amphibians who were drying out, insectoids whose shells were cracking from the heat, small furry beings who clutched their children with trembling arms. They looked at the rescue team with eyes full of hope and terror. "We are from the Galactic Military Academy," Yuna announced. "We are here to get you out. Everyone needs to stay calm and follow instructions." Elderly being pushed to the front. "You are just cadets. How can you save us? The conditions outside are impossible." Yuna met his gaze steadily. "I am from Earth. Nothing is impossible." The evacuation was slow and difficult. The civilians were weak, scared, and unused to harsh conditions. Yuna organized them into groups. She assigned the strongest cadets to help the weakest civilians. She created a system where those who could walk helped those who couldn't. They left the shelter just as the ceiling began to collapse. If they had been 5 minutes slower, everyone inside would have died. The journey back to the transport was even harder than the journey out. The volcanic activity was increasing. New rivers of lava cut off their planned route. Ash fell so thick that visibility dropped to almost nothing. Yuna carried 2 children on her back, one in each arm. Her muscles screamed with exhaustion, but she did not slow down. Hannah supported 3 injured civilians at once, her small frame somehow holding them all up. The other cadets watched in amazement. They were struggling to carry just 1 person each, but the humans kept moving like machines, like beings who did not understand the concept of surrender. At one point, a volcanic surge erupted nearby. A wave of heat and debris rolled toward the group. There was no time to run. Yuna threw herself over the children she was carrying, shielding their bodies with her own. The heat washed over her back. She felt pain, sharp and terrible, but she did not let go. When the surge passed, she stood up. Her uniform was burned. Her skin was damaged. But she was alive, and the children were unharmed. "We keep moving," she said through gritted teeth. "We are almost there." We reached the transport with minutes to spare. The pilot had kept the engines running despite the danger, trusting that the humans would return. As the last civilian was loaded aboard, the ground where the shelter had stood collapsed into a pit of molten rock. The transport lifted off and broke through the clouds. When they reached orbit, the cadets and civilians finally allowed themselves to breathe. Over 300 lives had been saved, 43 of them personally carried by Unit 28. By Hannah. The cadets who had volunteered had performed beyond all expectations, but everyone knew who had led them through the fire. When the transport docked at the academy, a crowd was waiting. Instructors, cadets, staff members, all gathered to see the impossible. A rescue mission that should have failed. Led by beings from a death world that everyone had dismissed as monsters, the academy held a ceremony 3 days later. The hall was packed. Yuna and Hannah stood at the front, wearing bandages and clean uniforms. Instructor Velos spoke first. "I have spent my career teaching that Earth was a horror, a nightmare, a place that could only produce violence and savagery. I was wrong. What I witnessed was not savagery. It was strength. It was compassion. It was the willingness to sacrifice everything for complete strangers. Humans are terrifying, yes, but they are terrifying because of how much they can endure, how far they will go, how fiercely they will fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." The director stepped forward. "From this day forward, Earth will no longer be classified as simply a death world. It will be recognized as an endurance origin, a world that creates beings of exceptional resilience. Cadet Park Yuna will be promoted to Special Survival Instructor. Cadet Hannah will be appointed head of the new Interspecies Rescue Division." The crowd erupted in applause. Even those who had once feared the humans were clapping. After the ceremony, Cadet Ren approached Yuna. He looked different than before. The arrogance was gone from his eyes. "I was wrong about you," he said quietly. "About all of it. I am sorry." Yuna looked at him for a moment. Then she held out her hand, a human gesture of peace and reconciliation. Ren didn't understand it, but he reached out and clasped her hand anyway. It was a start. That night, Yuna sat alone in her quarters. Her body ached from the rescue mission, but she was smiling. Her personal terminal beeped with an incoming transmission. She accepted it, and a familiar face appeared on the screen. Yuna laughed. The first real laugh she had allowed herself in days. "Just did what we always do, survive. And then some." Teho shook his head in mock amazement. "The whole galaxy is talking about you. The humans who walked through fire, the Death Worlders who save lives instead of take them. They just didn't know us," Yuna said softly. "Now they do. You think they will accept us? Really accept us?" Yuna thought about Instructor Velos, who had changed his entire worldview. About the cadets who had volunteered to follow her into hell. About Ren, who had found enough humility to apologize. "Yes," she said. "I think they will. It just takes time, and humans are good at time." She looked out her window at the stars spreading endlessly across the darkness. Somewhere out there was Earth, spinning around its yellow sun, filled with billions of people who had no idea what was happening so far from home. One day they would know. One day humanity would take its place among the stars, not as monsters, but as survivors, protectors, and friends. The galaxy had called Earth a death world. They weren't wrong. But they had made one critical mistake. They had forgotten that everything born in death learns to hold on to life harder than anything else in the universe.